Welcome back to another episode of Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Today, I want to talk about my neuropsychiatric evaluation. I just wanted to let you know how it went. I just forewarning, after I have a doctor's appointment, just from the driving there and the activities in the appointment and then driving home, my brain is like totally tired and I have a hard time articulating a lot of what I want to say. So it might not be apparent to you, but it's really challenging for me to do my podcast the nights that I have a doctor's appointment. So just a forewarning. Not that I need to warn you. I'm the one who's suffering here. But it's good. I want to make sure that I communicate how it went. And so I showed up and I sat down with the head doctor, and we started out by talking about my stroke and my history with like all the doctor's appointments, how it went, my symptoms post-stroke, what challenges I may have had cognitively before my stroke, which I told him I really didn't have any. There was nothing that stood out that I really had a problem with. I was your run-of-the-mill kind of student. I was a hard worker, I was a marketing director, and so I did well for myself. I felt like I was good at stuff, I mean, I said that I wasn't really challenged with anything before my stroke. So we talked about what recovery has looked like for me, going on short-term disability and then wanting to get back to work, and then having my symptoms and my health decline over the past year since January. And we talked a lot about my vision issues, not because he particularly has interest or can do anything or diagnosis about my vision issues, just so he's aware, because a lot of what I had to do today had to do with vision, and that's kind of why I'm really tired. So I had to stop what we were talking about, like, I don't know, maybe we were talking for maybe 5 minutes, and I was like, can I just interrupt and can we put the shades down in the room and dim the light? Like, I didn't ask to dim the lights. I asked to put the shades down because he was sitting in front of this big gigantic window, and that is like one of my worst environments I can sit in, is to have somebody sitting in front of a window. So of course he was fine with that. He put all the shades down, and then he went as far as to like dim the lights a little bit. So that was much better, and I was able to listen to what he was saying. I was so fixated on how disturbing the visuals were while he was talking, and there was a window behind him, that I wasn't even listening to him. So he was nice enough to take care of that. So we continued to talk a little bit about baseline kind of stuff. And then we started out by doing some testing. So I started out with him, and I sat with him for maybe a half hour, and then I sat with another psychiatrist person for 2 hours and did testing. So with him, some of the testing was, if you're interested, he would repeat some numbers to me, or he would say numbers to me, and I repeated them back to him. And then he would say, so he'd start with just a couple numbers, and then the list of numbers got longer and longer, and I would have to repeat them back. And they really push you to your limit. So it got, it's like they don't stop until you can't do it anymore. That's what it seems like. So, and then after that, he would say the numbers, and then I had to say them backwards. And okay, and then we did some math. So I was a math major in college, so I'm supposed to do math really well, I think. I don't know. I was an alcoholic in college too, so mix the two together, and I'm just kind of average at math, probably. That's just my own opinion. So I did some math. I did fine with the math. It seems like my stroke did not make my math didn't impact my math skills at all. So I did the math. It seemed, I guess, fine. We'll see from the results, but I felt fine with it. And then I had to do things like draw shapes on a piece of paper. So look at a shape and then draw the same shape on my own piece of paper. And there were different shapes that were drawn in this book, and I had to match them from one, like look at a bunch of shapes and then later say which shape was one of the shapes that I saw, kind of thing. And one of the popular ones that they seem to be, I've done this so many times since my stroke, but you draw a face of a clock and then they ask you to draw a certain time, like 10 after 11, and you have to draw that on there. So a lot of people, when they have a stroke, apparently are challenged to draw the face of the clock. And I remember having to do that when I first got to ICU after my clot, my clot buster. And I remember it being kind of challenging to write the numbers down on the clock, but I was fine. Like I could draw the circle and stuff. And I remember when I was in ICU, they said some people don't draw the left hand side, like the whole left side of the clock or something like that. So it says a lot when they have you do this test. But I've always been able to do that since my stroke. One of the things that he did with me was I read a sentence and then he told me another sentence, and then we worked on a separate activity, and then I had to tell him what the sentences were that I read and that he told me. So the first sentence that I read, I don't know what the exact sentence was, but I just remember there was a man and a brown dog. So then the sentence he told me, I still don't remember what the sentence was. So that's one of those things that I'm challenged with. So it seems like the things that I'm challenged with were identified. Like it happened when I was in the testing. So that's positive that they covered the issues that I'm having. So there were a few. That was one of them was I couldn't, it was like multitasking, like I can't remember two things at once. A normal person, like I used to be able to do that, but I can't do it. It seems like. So, let's see. Okay, so after that, and I may be missing stuff, but after that, he took me over next door to a female psychiatrist. I believe she said that that's what her profession is, but I think she works part-time now. We got into conversating. But so when I first walked in there, I had to do some math. So I had to do like, I think in 15 minutes there were like 40 maybe 40 math questions or something. And it got all the way up to like calculus stuff that I couldn't remember from school. The last two were the ones that I couldn't remember like how to do it. But anyway, I felt pretty good about those. Again, we'll see if it was all in my head or I actually knew what I was doing. Um, but I finished all of those, so that was good. And when she came in, she just gave me this vibe that she was just kind of like, there's no beating around the bush, there's no chit chatting, like we're just getting right down to business. So I felt like, oh, this is going to be a long 2 hours. It seemed like she had a pretty tough outer shell. That's what I was getting, the vibe I was getting when she first came in. But but she appeared like a lovely person, of course. It's just I was like kind of intimidated by her, I think. So we got right into it, and these are some of the things that we did. There was one thing, and these are not in order, but there was one thing we did where, you know how like in middle school and you want to send a secret note to somebody and you put shapes, you pair shapes with uh letters, or you pair numbers with letters, and then you write your message and then give them the code and then they can decode it. Well, that's what I had to do. I was decoding or something like that, or I was encoding actually. So the only thing that was difficult, that was timed, and I know I did it really slow because it was a lot for my eyes to look all over the page. Like I'm looking at numbers and shapes and looking up at the top at the legend, and then going down to the bottom and drawing the shape. So it was a lot of eye movement. So that was a little challenging for me. Um, then there was some spelling, which she said I was a very good speller. So that was a compliment. Again, yeah, we did some math. And then there was lots of shapes, lots of matching shapes. You have to like visualize flipping shapes around and putting them together, a lot of geometry type things. And that doesn't seem to be a problem for me. I'm not great at it. I was in school, but I'm not particularly great at it now. But it doesn't seem to be something that was necessarily affected by my stroke. It's hard to tell. I didn't do a lot of geometry right before my stroke, so I'm not sure. But so there was this one thing that we did where she read 12 things out loud, and then I had to tell her as many of the 12 things that I could remember. And then she did it again, and she did it 6 times, same 12 things. And I had to repeat back the things that I could remember 6 times. So we did that 6 times. So the first time I repeated back like 3 of them. The second time I repeated back like maybe 5 of them. And then, so it just got more and more. And by the end, I don't know if I got all 12 or not. I can't remember now. I think I was missing one. I'm not sure, but it's funny because although I could not remember what the sentence that the guy told me in the office, and I still don't remember what that sentence was that he said to me, I still remember the 12 things that the lady said. And I did the tests tonight before I did the podcast. So the 12 things were blue, sparrow, England, yellow, orange, Japan, Paris, Denver, Athens, Italy, crow, and robin. So not exactly in that order, but all of those were the 12 things, and I wrote them down. So I just read that. I didn't just remember that offhand. But what's interesting is I thought this was an interesting test because not only do you get to try like 6 times to do it, but it wasn't until the third time that she read them that I identified that there are categories in the list of 12 things. And if I try to match the things that are in each category, then I'm more apt to remember them. So it's something that my brain just did on its own. So I realized that there were colors. So I remembered all the colors together, blue, yellow, and orange. And then I knew that there were birds. So I remembered all the birds together, sparrow, robin, and crow. And then I knew there were countries, and I knew that there were cities. So it was fascinating to me that my brain was trying to find a solution for how to remember all of them. So by the third time, I was able to start categorizing them, and I was remembering them better. And then after those 6 times, we would do another activity, and she'd go back to that list again and say, now, what were all the cities in the list? And I'd have to say Paris, Athens, Denver. Yeah. So, of course, I would remember them now because I repeated them so many times while I was in there today. Another test that we did was we had to define, when I say we, I mean I had to define words. And I found this to be challenging, to find the words to explain something. It was really challenging for me. So what's an example? I can't think of an example right now because that would make my brain work overtime. But what I can do is go on to the next thing that they asked me about, and that was to compare. Find the similarity between opposite words. So this was like mind-boggling to me when I was in there. So she would say something like allow and restrict. What's the similarity between allow and restrict? Well, I know that there's a similarity. I just can't think of what it is. I can't figure out how to explain it. And there was a bunch of those. Like, she kept reading these opposite words and telling me to say what the similarity was, and I was just like, I could not wrap my head around what the similarity was. I just kept sitting there in silence. So I'm still kind of mind boggled by the fact that I can't seem to reach that level of thought, like to conceive something like that. It's just, I have a hard time even explaining it, but it's something that clearly I'm having a hard time with. Another thing that they did, which felt really humiliating, and I felt stupid, but I know that the test isn't to make me feel stupid, is she named a bunch of people in history and asked me to say what they were known for, or like who they were. And I couldn't explain who they were. Like, I knew who they are, but I couldn't explain who they were. So one was Cleopatra, one was Martin Luther King, and then she asked me, like, who wrote Romeo and Juliet? And I was like, I mean, now, this is something that I just know without even thinking about it, and I couldn't tell her. I couldn't tell her who wrote Romeo and Juliet. So it was just, I think the whole thing was exhausting for my brain. I think it would be exhausting for anybody's brain, but I think it really, I hope to God that they were able to identify the things that I was feeling were wrong with me. So I'm going to be waiting I think they said like the week after Christmas is when he'll have the report, and it's like a 20-page report. And yeah, so that's what happened. And I think it's probably not every day that people get to go have a neuropsychiatric evaluation. So there you go. That's what happened. And it was fun, and I talked to my daughter tonight, and she said, that one of the positive things, she's she's clearly the how do they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She's like, here's the good thing, Mom. The good thing is you're going to all these doctors and you're checking off a lot of stuff that's not wrong with you. And so she's absolutely right. That's true. And I have thought of that, but it's something I should probably uh, focus on sometimes. She said, "Well, you're focusing on from the neck up. We should just keep going and go to doctors from the neck down and see if everything's functioning right, all your parts." So she was cute. But the last thing that I did was I answered a questionnaire about when I was 11 or 12. It was like when you were 11 or 12, and then it asked like your temper, did you have a hard time remembering things, like that kind of thing. It was just like, I don't know, 20 questions maybe, and you were just rating like strongly believe, slightly, that kind of thing. So that was interesting. It feels very much like they're doing these tests but don't have any idea what I was like. Growing up, I did tell them that I was a good student and things like that. So we'll see. I'm hopeful. But I need to get a good night's sleep tonight for sure. I feel very much in the brain fog area. So I'm going to sign off, but thanks for listening. And I appreciate you showing up and wanting to be a part of the recovery journey that I'm on. So thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.